You're listening to Gradient Dissent, a show about making machine learning work in the real world, and I'm your host, Lukas Biewald. Today, I'm talking to Denis Yarats, who is the CTO of Perplexity, which is right now one of the most exciting and successful Gen AI apps out there. So it was a really amazing opportunity to talk to him about how he thinks about product success, how he thinks about building high quality Gen AI applications, and how he thinks about structuring his team and setting up his company for success. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I enjoyed doing it. The place to start, I'm actually a heavy Perplexity user myself and is excited to talk to you. But for those of those listening that don't know what Perplexity is, would you mind describing it?
Yeah, Perplexity is first and foremost an answer engine. Is the fastest way to get answers to your questions, no matter how difficult they are. So we're trying to combine essentially the advancements in search engines, in large language modeling to deliver this technology. So two things we kind of care about for simplicity is just how do we make our answers to be high quality and helpful, and how can we deliver them fast? So that's sort of two things we are focusing on.
And so what parts do you do yourself and what parts are you using third-party APIs?
Yeah, we started early on because we didn't know if this thing even has a market fit, right? So we started heavily using all the third parties. We initially used Bing as a search engine, and then also obviously OpenAI models. Kind of hacked quickly something, and then once we noticed that people actually like it, then we start investing heavily in infrastructure. So at this point, I think a lot of stuff is in-house. Obviously, we rely on the frontier models, kind of things like GPT-4 or Opus, right? Those are the best, and very few people have access. We're obviously not in a position right now to train those models. So that's been getting from third parties, but for a lot of other, pretty much all the other models, then there's tons of models, all kind of different classifiers, embeddings, you name it, large language models as well. We heavily rely on open source. Things like Llama 3 is very useful for us. So we've built a training pipeline, we've built a inference, and so a lot of traffic is served on the in-house models. We also spend a lot of time and continue investing in the search engine, because for our service to sort of work well, we not just we not only need the relevant documents, but we actually need content and good snippets. So we kind of have to build a content ranking system, which is kind of a different thing that classical search engines provides. So that's what we invest in for. And yeah, obviously all the other infrastructure is in-house. So
you've built your own essentially classical search engine with a crawler and indexer and all of that?
Yeah. This still work in progress, but I think we've been investing in this for over a year now. We have a decent site index, obviously not as big as we would like it to be right now, but that's work in progress. And we kind of going right now after the head of the distribution, right? So we obviously not gonna do well on the tail, but that's where actually LLM and a powerful LLM simplifies things a lot, right? So that's where if you don't have if you cannot find relevant documents, maybe LLM can step in, or you can just say, okay, so here I don't know what's the answer. So this is a possible explanation, or this is a possible answer. Maybe it can ask maybe you can rephrase your question, stuff like that. And I think for us, as I mentioned before, it's very important to not only find the documents, but also scrape and parse them with a high quality. So because we ultimately need the content for classical recommendations, for classical search system, you don't need, because that you sort of delegate this responsibility to the user. You just show a link, and then user gonna click on the link and gonna read through the documents. So you actually technically, even though you have to compute, you have to get some access to the the content in some form or in some way, just like to compute features, embeddings, and stuff like that. But like this is not being used like for the user, but like on our end, this is something that is very important. And ranking also is quite a bit different, just because we are prioritizing like different things, not maybe optimized very on the click probability of a click, because that's not what we need, but more optimized on the if this content, if this web page was like whatever snippets inside it has, is it gonna be helpful to answer the question? So this is a different ranking target that we are optimized our ranking model for, and so that's kind of like I would say like the main difference between like classical search engines and what we're trying to do.
Do you find that search engines have to combat things like SEO spam because it's so lucrative? Do you have the same issue?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think yes, this is an issue. I think there's like two things going for us, right? So one is we are, because our index is not as large yet, so we kind of like we spend a lot of time to build this like trust score for like domain or like a web page, and so we only sort of like prioritize in our ranking stuff that is kind of like should be high quality, right? And then LLM also then plays a big part of it, because then the LLM can kind of like detect if after like you provide like a certain additional signals, it can like tell, okay, so this is, I would just like use this source because it's has a higher reputation and likely going to have like genuine content rather than the copycat. So I think that those are sort of like two things that are we invest into to kind of like fight SEO. But in general, I think like what the way people play SEO, right, is they try to figure out like the ranking signals that let's say Google is using. Actually, there was like a couple of weeks ago, there's a leak, right? So, and then so they would build the things to sort of like trick the ranking system. So maybe it's going to be like more clicks or like whatever other stuff. So, and because those things are not part of our ranking system, and so it's kind of like that content doesn't go up as high as otherwise.
Uh-huh. And then on the LLM side, you know, at least with the pro version, you have a choice of model, don't you?
Yeah.
Why do you do it like that? Like, why not kind of, couldn't you do like some analytics to pick the best model and just always give you the best thing?
Yeah. This is I think this is that's where it's going. I think we're still like in very early stages, and where users kind of like want to have variety. So we still like in this stage where people know what is the difference between like GPT-4 and Claude. I think like as AI sort of like gets more wide known and people start like using product like this, I think people not gonna care. But like this is actually one of a unique feature of our product, let's say comparing to just let's say like ChatGPT or like Claude or Google, because we can offer different models under the same. And some people find actually very interesting people the distribution between like which models people select is quite uniform. So this is encouraging. But yes, you're completely right. You know, as we go into the future, I think definitely you will have a system that's going to decide, you know, how much compute this query require, and then based on that you're going to route it to like appropriate model. So it's essentially where all of this going is kind of like everything is going to be like proportional to the compute. It's kind of like, okay, so this query is like very simple, you know, you can run a simple model. If it's like something more complicated, requires a lot of reasoning, maybe requires like multiple steps, then there's going to be more compute involved. This routing is going to be done.
And what do you mean by everyone, the distribution of models people select is uniform? You mean like everybody picks the same model?
Oh no, it means like there is a good spread. So like a lot of, so there is it means like, if you have like 5 options, I think it's kind of like fairly uniform rather than like everybody picks the one model. So it's like some people, like let's say like 30% people using like GPT-4, like 30% using Opus and stuff like that. So
yeah.
So kind of like people like diversity, which I think makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think at some point, those things, as long as you provide like a cohesive product that is useful, I think people probably not going to pay much attention to those details.
And I think we found an interview from about 6 months ago on the new Stack where your CEO was quoted as saying, over the next quarter, we're going to move everybody completely to Perplexity models. Has that happened, or is that still in the works?
Yeah, I think like a lot of traffic, I'm guessing, I don't know, at least like 50% already served in-house and like on different models. And as I said, like this is just the, right now, like we're talking about the main model that like generates the final answer, but like there's a lot of stuff happens before this and all of those models in-house. The only, as I said, yeah, the only sort of like this like frontier models that are the most capable models right now. So kind of like obviously don't have those in-house, and some people, for like extra reasoning, some people require those. So that's why we have an option. But you can, as a pro user in Perplexity, you can select either our models or all kinds of other models from different providers.
And the models you made, that are these the same as the same genre as the open source models that you've released?
It's they're like post-trained. So for example, we take like Llama 3, like 70B. That's sort of like the most capable open source model at the moment. And because the way we use models, they sort of like have to perform like a specific task, which is kind of like, getting search results, and then you're trying to generate an answer. So those models then go through like additional stages of post-training, where we teach those models, okay, so like how do you understand the distribution of the search results that we provide in you, like the snippets. Then we teach those models, okay, so like if you don't have an answer, if you don't have like a grounding or like coverage in the search results, like you don't want to like hallucinate, instead of like you want to like refuse. And there's like all kinds of like different like use cases that are product specific. So, like one of the very early things that we're like trying to address, like I remember like early version of Perplexity where you put like a common name of a person, and we would just find like different people and like mashes it up into like a Frankenstein. So so we kind of like try to teach these models to, okay, so this is information kind of like maybe contradicts each other. So likely that's not the same person, but different people. And so just like when you provide an answer, like try to, provide description for each person individually rather than just like combining together. So things like that, like sometimes we want to see if it's for like certain queries, you can answer like very shortly. Let's say you're asking like, what is the NVIDIA like market cap, right? Yeah, you can basically just answer in one sentence. But I think we find it's more useful when you can provide like additional nuance, even like users maybe didn't have this intent, because it's actually useful. So those kind of things, we have like a different vectors and criteria. What is a good answer? How a good answer should look like, and sort of like, yeah, we optimize for those metrics.
So I would imagine you have one of the biggest embeddings databases in the world, given what you're doing. Is that something custom that you built, or did you take an open source project, or how does that work?
Yeah. So we have a lot of data, and this is I think this is actually helps a lot. I think because once you have this data, you can train like all kinds of models. We started with the sort of like pre-trained like BERT models, right? And then on top of that, we like completely train them on for whatever time. We have like all kinds of like embeddings for like different stuff, and because they've been used in ranking, they've been using like content ranking, snippet generation, like stuff like that, lots of things, and those are fully based on our internal distribution of tasks. But and same goes for the all the LLMs that we post-train, right? So like we know exactly what people asking. We have a very diverse distribution of prompts. So we have I think every day we, I don't know, getting like 10 million different prompts. So we just need to make sure we utilize them. And so that's, we like see which prompts like underperform. So we take those prompts, like make a better answers, and that goes into training. And the same true for like all kinds of different models, like all different like classifiers, all different like auxiliary models, embeddings, ranking and stuff.
Wait, so when you say you have 10 million different prompts, these are user queries, or is this kind of internal?
Yeah. This is user queries, right? So like people, I think right now, like, we're roughly getting like 10 million different queries. Sometimes, obviously, some of them like not useful, so we don't use all of them. Some people opt out from training, right? So like people don't want it. So, but like for those, we kind of like clean those up, get a amount that we need. It's actually, it's not about sort of the quantity, the sheer quantity of the prompts, but it's more like about entropy and like how much information they carry. So that's what you're optimizing.
Meaning, like how unusual the prompt is, or
like how diverse they are, like how much sort of like things they cover. You can get like a lot of prompts, but they're going to be all like the same. Maybe they're like asking about the same stuff. So that's not super useful.
Mm. And how do you think about the quality of the results?
Yeah, so we I've spent a lot of time on this, kind of build internal sort of like taxonomy and sort of like guidelines. What is a good answer? What is a good answer is, and then we sort of like, right now employing, we have a internal team of annotators. We call them like LLM teachers. We also work with some third-party vendors for data. We also heavily employ like LLMs to aid humans to verify the answers. And so so basically the idea is just you are getting to answers and you say, okay, which one is better? And then when you decide which one is better, you kind of like utilize those guidelines that we have. So, and then eventually this signal is propagating to training, and then like we get reward model, and then from the reward model you train a model that is kind of like adhere to those guidelines. And the most important thing is sort of like establish data flywheel here, so you can like constantly can take advantage of new data and retrain things. So that this takes like a lot of time to get right, and I don't think like we fully yet there, but we've made a lot of progress.
And to hear you're retraining the LLMs, I guess. Or are you going deeper into would you potentially like redo embeddings or? Everything basically being retrained. So like it's not like we train it once and then keep it, because like things are changing. We get more data. We get more high quality data. This is like constantly trying to retrain things. Where do you think, like, I'm thinking in your sort of like flow, there's sort of like could be trouble at any point. Like you got to find the documents, you got to return the documents, you got to like kind of understand and summarize the documents to the user. Like, where do you feel like the most opportunity is for improvement? Like where's the typical error in your system these days? If there is an error.
Yeah, of course there's an error. I don't think by no means we nailed it. Honestly, I would say like each and every piece contributes a lot. I think like ranking is a big thing. Then the how big is the index and how many documents you have in your index, right? So like sometimes actually, because like ranking and the index size kind of like proportional things. So, if you have a bigger index, it's, your ranking can be slightly worse and you're still going to get a decent result, and vice versa. The quality of the scrape is very important. We spend like a lot of time to making sure, there's like lots of sites right now where you have to, we have to be like custom parsers, because like maybe they have like some particular like things that if you don't optimize for those, then you're not going to get like the most ideal scrape. Embeddings for the snippets very important. Like how do you exactly like chunk the web documents? Then the obviously LLM itself, like how do you make sure you don't like hallucinate? How do you make sure that you don't cite irrelevant results? I think each piece contributes to the overall error. So that's why it's very important to sort of like have an eyes over each individual component and like be able to debug things quickly and like understand what's going on and sort of like evals. Yeah, for each step you need to have like a very sort of like comprehensive evaluation. So like whatever it is.
I mean, so there's clearly like a latency and quality trade-off here, isn't there?
Yeah.
So from like a user perspective, how do you think about that balance? Like, do you lock the quality and try to get the latency as low as possible, or lock the latency and try to get the quality up? Like, how do you actually deal with that systematically?
So we kind of like, I think like latency is, yes, it's exactly right. There is always trade-off. More compute you spend, the likely you're going to have a better answers, but it's going to be more expensive and slower. I think we right now in our product, we have like this two modes. One is just default search. The other one is like pro search. So, and that's where, for default search, I think we like, okay, so trying to optimize this is you get like very good answers very fast. So, good for like most of the searches that you have, most of the questions you have. On the other hand, yes, when you need like a more complicated stuff, maybe, and that's actually, usually quite like a good proxy here. Like it's just like the length of the prompt, right? The length of the query. Like if it's something like very few words, then likely people expect very fast answer, right? So it's kind of like Google, right? But if somebody spends a lot of time typing something in, right? So then maybe they would prefer to wait a little bit longer, but get a much better answer, right? Because they already, let's say, like spend a minute typing that prompt. So that's a kind of like very rough like classifier of kind of like how much compute and latency budget you have. So those things can be used, but in general, we're trying to get to a point where the system is going to be smart enough, and it can like, depending on the complexity of the query, it can like allocate the compute, and then the way you optimize it is kind of like to users like it, right? So to users find it helpful or not. So yeah, maybe there is always trade-off. There's like trade-off because they probably don't want to wait. Like they can wait a little bit longer as long as they don't have to retype the question and make it better, and they can get an answer. So if they, in order for them to get answer to the same question on Google, they maybe like have to type 10 different queries and like analyze stuff. So that's still going to be much slower.
Do you experiment with your own internal prompting of your own LLM, or is the need for that gone because you're doing so much post-training and?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I think like it's still, you want your model to be quite general. So I think that's where I think that the diversity of the prompts still plays important role. But for when you post train, you kind of like, you don't have to essentially like provide like this let's say like complicated system message, because it's already like being injected as part of like post training.
That makes sense. What do you think are like the perfect like perplexity use cases where you really think you'll be better than OpenAI and Google?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something where you can get a unique experience for like, okay, maybe not on all the types of queries, maybe not as general as Google, but like on some sort of like verticals and sort of like use cases where you can just outperform them, just like provide a better experience. Yeah, so far we've seen a lot of this is research, kind of like research type of questions, things where people try to get a unbiased opinion about something. So kind of like a lot of people who use us as like knowledge worker, like professionals. And the interesting thing is just like those users are, you know, a lot of users use Perplexity for work, right? So and that's very important because this is something that's a useful tool, and you know, and because of that, I think it's also like has a high potential of being monetizable. You know, obviously we're not going to be like as good as like when Google says like trying to NBA score, right? So it's like Google like nailed it. It's just like perfect already. But yeah, there's like certain things where maybe you can answer like much more complicated questions that require like, you know, multi-step reasoning and stuff like that, and optimize system a little bit different. But also like the way you position your product and like the tools that you have in your product and the features that you have in the product is gonna just be like tailored a little bit better for your work than let's say like Google or stuff like that. So that's kind of, you know, probably not going to be like, yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's going to be like super general, but I think there's going to be opportunity to make it useful in some very significant fraction of use cases.
In kind of controversial domains, or like domains that are really kind of salient to people, where you know, the conventional wisdom, if you polled people, would be different than kind of the objectively true answer. Do you aspire to kind of find the true answer and give that to your users? And how would you go about that?
Yeah, I think no, we don't. Yeah, we actually want to be like unbiased, and I think this is something that's going to be super important. You know, even like this year alone, like later in the year, but going forward as well. So we trying to.
Why is that, Dennis?
You know, yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? But I think, yeah, it's kind of like would be important to provide and sort of like to train your models in a way where it can provide like different points of view, and so not be biased like towards like particular direction. I think that's actually, honestly, this is going to be like the hardest problem probably to solve and make sure. So we've been thinking a lot about this from like very beginning. That's why like one of the key features, like even though it's like very simple, but like citations and sort of like making sure that people can also, if needed, then verify sources. It's very important rather than just getting them then an answer and like be done with it, right? So those things, yeah, it's going to be very important.
Do you have to handle especially a case where you get totally disagreeing answers? Like I feel like usually when I use it, it kind of pulls the general consensus for me, but I could imagine situations where you just get completely different answers from different sources. How do you handle that?
Yeah, sometimes it happens. I think basically, yeah, there's like two things, right? So there's like the diversity in ranking when we sort of like, when you run content, you can kind of like make sure that there's like some degree of diversity in there, instead of just like, you know, you maybe have like one piece of information and then it's kind of like a lot of like documents cite this or like carry this information, but it's exactly the same in amount of like entropy in there. But then there's like some other results which is kind of maybe rank less favorably, but like this is a alternative like point of view. So you want to, and that's where I think like LLM is important, because they can understand, okay, so there is this like much content, but it actually conceptually it carries only this like piece of information. But then there's like this another piece of content that, you know, maybe like less is not ranked as high, but has like a also valid information, just like different point of view. So like LLM can do a lot of work there. And then finally you have to, when you generate like synthesize an answer, you just have to train your model in a way that it can like cover both points of view. So you essentially, you know, to summarize, kind of, have to retrieve a lot of stuff but kind of like when you retrieve, maximize the amount of information, not amount of like characters or tokens, the amount of information.
When you think about hiring LLM teachers, do you try to like get a diverse set of people? Like, sometimes I used to wonder with Google search results, when they would hire the annotators, like mostly in Silicon Valley, I kind of wondered if that was influencing the Google search results. Do you worry about that?
I think it's very important to have a. First of all, I think it's important for them to have like different skill set. Some people may be like good at writing, like journalism or like economy or whatever. Some people may be like good at coding, like more technical. So I think this is one very important dimension. But also, we're trying to hire from like different states from across the country. Not only we kind of like remote friendly in general. I think like we started a company, as a remote company, and like yes, we have an office in San Francisco right now, where like most of the people are, but like we still have like a small office in New York and like a few people working remotely. So I think it makes it a little bit easier to hire like a diverse group of people. But I think it's a very important point.
And what do you like? How do you respond to like the criticism that people won't like go to the websites anymore, and people won't really be like incentivized to make high quality websites?
I think this is I think there has to be probably something where you have to work together with the content creators and sort of like figure out a way where, like one thing, for example, yes, maybe people go like less frequently from Perplexity than they do from Google, but like when they go, they have like much higher intent, right? So like in Google, you get the link, you just go there and like you bounce back because it was just like you quickly find out it's like not relevant information. So here, you when you click, you like for sure are very interested in your document. So it's kind of like, again, trading the number of clicks, but and with it was like more like important clicks, kind of like that. So it's not just about the count, but it's a different measure. And I think like on that measure, yes, I don't think like it's as skewed as it might seem, just because you get a higher chance like somebody goes to your website and just like reads the whole thing rather than from Google. But so that's one thing I think I would want to like point out. So but the other thing, I think, yes, it's going to be interesting to figure out what is the beneficial way for both of the parties, because I think like content generation is very important, and I think if people stop producing it, it's then probably not good for anybody.
Okay, and on a totally different note, Twitter tells me you have kind of an interesting story about pitching Yann LeCun. Would you mind sharing it?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was so we like initially, we wanted to do like search engine, right? But then when we would go to like VCs and they would say, oh, like, you guys crazy because there's a Google, so it's just not going to work. And so we initially, so we decided, so we're going to still be search, but in order for us to get money, we'll just do something narrower. And like one of the first thing we realized, so Twitter is, very important thing, and like a lot of people like Twitter, and we were just so can we and like it was also well known that Twitter search sucks, like used to suck, right? And we were like, okay, is there like anything to do there? And like with LLM, so we spent a month like scraping a lot of content from Twitter, and like we built a big database of users and tweets and like connections between them, and then kind of like build in this like natural language interface on top. And that turns out worked very well. And then we was like, okay, so trying to like pitch different people. And then we were like I wanted to, because I was getting my PhD at NYU, so I was like on the knew Yann before, and we like Arvind and I went to New York, tried to see if Yann is going to be interested in like give us a check. We waited and we kind of like created this like strategy. Okay, so like Yann really likes Twitter, and one of his nemesis is Gary Marcus. So because they always like have the disputes, and we were like, okay, so we came up with like some of the interesting queries about like things like, how many people engage with Yann tweets instead of like Gary's tweets, and it actually turns out like much better, and he was like very happy about it. So, and he's like got really curious, and yeah, that's helped us to get him on board.
Wasn't there something about you were like you were waiting for him for a very long time?
Yeah. So I think it was like a little bit like exaggerated. Maybe, yeah, I think we waited maybe like for like an hour or so, because I think he has like some meeting or something like that. I forgot, but yeah, I don't think it was like 5 hours or so.
That's it.
Because it's makes a good story though.
So you've built, I think, one of the most successful Gen AI applications. And, people ask me for advice, every day about how to build a good Gen AI application, which is kind of a vague question, but I feel like I should pass it along to you because you would be in much more of a place to respond to that than me. Like, what do you tell people that come to you and ask you, how do I build a Gen AI application? What are the best practices?
Well, I think the thing that really worked well for us, and I think it was without it, I don't think we would be where we are. Is speed. I think we basically, and it was like very tough. It is still very hard. You have to be. It has to be your life. It's not a job. But yeah, you have to just do things much faster than everybody else do, and like you have to figure out like what is the most important and try to get the prototypes very quick and like see if they have any fit or not, and then not get discouraged if they don't work, and just like try next idea. We like for the first 3 months we like been trying, I don't know, like tons of ideas, like maybe like 10 different things, and we were just like very quick at like like literally if we had like an idea, we would implement it in like 2 days, and then we just have a prototype and then people try. Obviously technology was at the level where it became possible, primarily like LLM, because like with LLM just like speeds you up so much, but I think this is the most important thing, just relentless execution, because if you especially want to compete against the big companies, they have like all the resources in the world, so you have no chance otherwise. But also, as always, there is a selection bias, right? So there's like certain things that went our way. Mainly like ChatGPT was a huge, I think like for the whole industry, right? So that was, but we were like prepared for that, right? So we started the company, in July, and we've been like kind of like hoping that things like this is going to happen, and we sort of like anticipating them, and then should like build infrastructure and like product for that. And then when it came out, we were sort of like in a perfect position to take advantage of it. So
what were the early signs that you saw that let you know it was working, that were different than the things that weren't working?
Yeah, so I mean, it was like kind of like, and this is the main reason when we decided to start a company. It was just the certain things that you would try to do before, and it would take you so much time, and then now you can like take GPT. I think at that level was like GPT Da Vinci 3 or something, Da Vinci 2, Code Da Vinci, and you would like in a day you can do like something decent, which like before was probably like impossible. And then around like I guess October, we had the first prototype of Perplexity, where it was just like a Slack bot and Discord bot, and it's been working well. We kind of like used this internally. It was cool. But then I remember distinctively when that was like a few weeks prior of ChatGPT, when Da Vinci 3 came out, and we like literally replaced the model without like any other code changes, and it was like significantly, you can see right away just things like work so much better. Like we like literally within like 30 minutes we like noticed this big difference, and I was just okay, so this is there is something here. And yeah, so it was very important at that time, and I'm sure like the same is kind of like identify an opportunity early on, and just be curious about like trying different things and like see where is currently like inefficiency, and see if and I think like one of the important thing, and maybe we got like a lot of heat for it initially, was like, and people still like call us like a wrapper company, whatever, but I think that was like the most important decision we've made. I feel like, the only we realized early on is just like, okay, so if you want to build something like Perplexity, let's say like 5 years ago, you would have to initially, collect data, train a model, build a product, get the users, and only see like if there's market fit, right? It takes a lot of time. And then you realize there's like no market fit. So what GPT technology and like LLMs in general, like allowed you to do is sort of like flip this process from backwards, and you just like very quickly can prototype product and see if there's market fit. And if there is market fit, then you just build all the other blocks behind. So because like the most important thing that you get is the idea that if there is market fit or not, and then data, like data flywheel. And then once you have data, it's just a matter of execution. And so, yeah, that was a key, I feel like.
And then I guess my last question is, well, what has been the hardest parts about scaling up your application?
Honestly, the hardest part was like hiring good people. Like if you get good engineers, I think they'll just like figure out. Like these days, infrastructure is at such a high level. I think if you just have some decent understanding of what needs to be done, it's very hard to fail. But I think it was also like very important to sort of like identify what we care about, and then just like always make sure that we optimize for those things. And for us, as I mentioned earlier, there was like two things: speed and accuracy. So we kind of like, we decided, okay, so there's like a lot of things we can do. Let's just like stay focused. So these are two things that are at the core, because like if we fail on those two things, like the rest doesn't matter. And so we're like, okay, so this is two things. Let's make sure we do well here, and like let's build all of our tools or our evals, all of our infrastructure to make sure that those things we can do very well. And that then eats into like kind of like part of your culture. Then like the people you bring, they're like see that the founders or the employees cares about those things, then they start care about this, and then you wouldn't see like now if somebody pushing like a feature and like it drastically increases latency, right? So people not going to do this because they're going to like test for this specifically, and they have going to have like all the tools that's going to help those people to like measure the effect of whatever feature they have. So I think those things are very important. Just basically what's your values are.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thanks for the great questions.
Thanks. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Gradient Dissent. Please stay tuned for future episodes.